If you live in the United States and enjoy a barbecue, estimates are that 4 out of 5 of you have used this product. You may have some in your house right now, but by the look of things, we're going to have to get some more pretty soon. Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to History Heights. I'm Gail Masenda. Today, we're going to explore the surprising story of Kingsford charcoal. Oversimplified, charcoal is the burnable black carbon residue that's left over when wood is burned, charred, with minimal oxygen. Charcoal isn't a new invention. It's much older than the United States history that we generally talk about here on History Heights. It's been used for many hundreds of years as a fuel source since it's lightweight. Creates heat that burns hotter and cleaner than just wood, and that makes it great for cooking. This shape of charcoal that we generally think of today is called a briquette. In 1895, William Taggart patented a form of treated charcoal which he called lump of fuel, but it was used at that time as an industrial fuel source. Then 2 years later, Taggart transferred the patent to Ellsworth Sawyer of Pennsylvania. In the years that followed, Sawyer obtained multiple patents for machines and made improvements to making charcoal briquettes, but it still didn't really catch on either. Orrin Stafford of Oregon was the one who finally patented the process that gave charcoal the formula and pillow shape we know today. He patented his process in 1923, and he named his invention briquettes. Meanwhile, Henry Ford was doing his thing with the founding of the Ford Motor Company, building of his Model Ts, and inventing the moving assembly line. Of all the things that Ford was, and some were good and some were not, his greatest skill was that as an efficiency expert. He was always looking for ways to do things better, cheaper, quicker, all while reducing waste. And that fact is key to our story. The Ford plant in Dearborn, Michigan was an industrial marvel in its day. It grew to become a self-contained city, much more than just a factory building with an assembly line. It produced its own electricity and had blast furnaces to produce its own iron. Rather than paying suppliers for materials and goods, the Ford Company owned their own iron mines, rubber plantations, ships, trains, and of course, its own fleet of trucks. Ford never stopped looking for ways to improve the quality of his products while keeping the costs as low as possible. The Ford factory used a lot of materials and, as would be expected, had a lot of byproducts. Ford could not stand waste. He was always looking for ways to use those leftovers. Coal was used in the blast furnaces to melt iron ore, but the byproducts, such as coal tar and ammonium sulfate, were also reused or sold. Dust from grinding wheels was reclaimed and remelted. Waste paper turned into packing. Oil was recycled. Even nails were gathered and straightened to be reused or melted and recycled. Henry Ford's great successes gave him the opportunity to hang out with some of the greatest minds of the era. Ford, along with some of his friends, were known as the Vagabonds. The core group, along with Ford, was Thomas Edison, Harvey Firestone, and John Burroughs. Ford brought the Vagabonds together for networking, of course, but make no mistake about it, this was also a publicity stunt. The Vagabonds traveled together across the country, and due to their celebrity, the press followed along and printed many stories about them. This was free advertising at a time when the automobile was changing the American culture. The press called it auto camping, and it showed the public just how accessible the great outdoors really was, especially, of course, in a Ford-built automobile. One of the vagabond trips was to the Adirondack Mountains in New York. On this particular trip, the invited guests included President Warren G. Harding and the name you have been waiting to hear, Edward G. Kingsford. Kingsford was the husband of Henry Ford's first cousin, Mary, known as Minnie to her friends. The vagabond trips were far from primitive camping. These wealthy men brought their cooks and staff with them to ensure their comfort. This was the first time Kingsford was invited, and I think we can understand why he wanted to impress his cousin-in-law and his friends. Kingsford did own some car dealerships, but was also a real estate agent. He knew of a large forest in northern Michigan, and his wife's cousin, that would be Henry Ford, owned a factory that used a lot of wood. It took about 100 board feet of lumber for every Model T, and with more than 1 million Model Ts sold in 19, Ford wanted to produce his own supply of wood. Kingsford suggested that he could help Ford by not only supplying the wood, but by a process which he knew about, which would take the waste wood from the factory floor and press it together with sawdust, coal, and tar and cornstarch to become a burnable fuel that could be sold. They could also use the stumps and branches from the timber that would otherwise have gone to waste. And of course, that appealed to Ford. Henry Ford and Thomas Edison designed the factory that would produce charcoal briquettes from Ford's leftover wood, and they quickly began manufacturing and marketing the new product through Ford car dealerships. The bags of briquettes carried the name Ford, and by the 1930s they could be purchased along with a small grill as a picnic kit. When Henry Ford died in 1947, his son sold that part of the business to a group of local businessmen. It was renamed Kingsford in honor of the men who brought it to Henry Ford, and the town, also named Kingsford, where the factory was based. Kingsford didn't invent charcoal briquettes, and he didn't own the factory that made them, but it is his name that we associate with charcoal today. The next time you're having a cookout or a barbecue, tell your friends this story. But remember that while we can learn from the past, we do not live there. Go be awesome today and make your own history. And here's another story that talks about the cultural changes due to the growing popularity of the automobile.